Greetings, I'm Professor K, and in this short video presentation we're going to see how we go about setting up and using a DHCP user class to hand out an alternate set of DHCP options. Now, setting up a user class option is not something that's done very often, but there may be times when you want to define a certain set of users on your network and apply certain specific DHCP options just for them, such as your developers group, or others that need to have access to high-speed internet or some other reason that they give you. So right now, everybody on the network that is pulling down DHCP is getting the same scope options. There's nothing different for anybody. But we can configure a special user class and we can assign them different scope options. So let's see how we do this. Let's go up to the top of our IP4 scope and we're going to select Define User Classes. From here we click on the Add button. Let's go and define this as being a high-speed gateway. Now down here in the ASCII is where you're going to put in your user class. So this is all going to be in ASCII language. So let's go ahead and get this started. So what am I doing here? I'm using ASCII to spell out the word high speed. Each one of these combination of numbers spells a letter in ASCII. And this class ID is case sensitive, so I've made the H and the S uppercase. So that's important to note. Go ahead and say OK to that. Go ahead and close the user class dialog box. So now that we have our user class defined, we next need to create a policy. Highlight the Policies tab and then right-click and then select New Policy. We'll identify this policy as being High-Speed Gateway. Go ahead and click Next. From here we can add a condition. The condition will be if the user class equals, pull down this window and select High-Speed Gateway, click the Add button, click the OK button, click Next, and from here we can define the router. And so this user class is going to use a different default gateway of 192.168.145.2. Go ahead and click Add and say Next. So the condition is set that if a user class needs to use the high-speed gateway, the action is they will be sent over to a different router using IP address of 192.168.145. You can go ahead and say Finish on this. So we have defined the user class as being high-speed gateway. Now we have to assign this user class to the users that are going to be using it. So the next thing we have to do is configure our client and assign it to use this new high-speed gateway policy that we created. So to do this, I'm going to go to the client, and I'm going to bring up a command prompt, and I'm going to do an IP config. And it tells me that my Ethernet is 0 is currently using the following default gateway, but I want it to use a different gateway, so I'm going to use a class ID setting that it's available in IP config to configure this machine to use that particular class ID. So from the command prompt on my client's machine, I'm now going to configure this client to use the user class we have defined for it up inside of DHCP. So using the ipconfig utility on the client machine, I can type in ipconfig /setClassID, tell it which interface to use, and then in quotes, assign it to the class ID that we created up inside of DHCP. So everything that we're doing on this client machine is case sensitive, so make sure that you type it in using those upper and lower case letters as we defined in the ASCII for the class or the user ID. Now once you have set the user class ID, you can check to see if it's using the correct default gateway just by doing an IP config, and it should be pulling down the IP address for this router that you have assigned to the user class for using the high-speed gateway. Okay, that's going to conclude this short video presentation on how we go about configuring a user class up inside of our DHCP. Now, if you have any questions or concerns about any of the information that was provided for you in this short video presentation, please do not hesitate to reach out and contact your instructor, and I'll see you in my next video.